Welcome to the Last Drop Sobriety Podcast, where I get the privilege to interview recovering addicts and alcoholics who have maintained their sobriety. These individuals have achieved great success while staying sober, inspiring all of us to overcome challenges and to achieve our goals. So whether you're someone seeking recovery, have years of sobriety, or someone who supports a sober lifestyle, the Last Drop is your source of motivation, inspiration, and hope today. I am your host, Tim O'Connor. Please join us as we celebrate the Last Drop, the moment where everything changes and the real journey begins. Be sure to head over to the lastdropclothingco.com to check out the newest drop today. Welcome to the Last Drop Sobriety Podcast, where we celebrate the incredible journeys of individuals who have embraced a sober lifestyle and found strength, resilience, and purpose in the process. I'm your host, Tim O'Connor, and on today's episode, we have the infamous Office Recovery meme page from Instagram. This page is perfect for our topic today, which is humility, happiness, and hope in sobriety. If you haven't seen this page, please go check it out on Instagram because it's great. It has a lot of office-related content and memes that tie in with sobriety, and it's just super, super funny. When I first came across that, I was like, dude, this page is so great. So if you are a fan of The Office, go check it out now. On Instagram, it is at Office Recovery. Be sure to give them a follow. And yeah, man, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast with me.
Oh yeah, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it, man. I'm doing great. I'm great. It's an honor to be on here with you, man. A real privilege.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Yeah, time is important to all of us, and it's just I'm always so grateful for people who take an hour out of their day just to like jump on and like have a little conversation about sobriety, so I really appreciate it. So like, why did you start the Office Recovery page?
Oh man, well, I've been a huge fan of The Office ever since it first aired, actually, when it was airing on NBC, and so I watched it all through college, and then I just never stopped watching it. It's just one of those shows, any Office fan, usually you've got the diehard Office fans and you got the people who've dabbled a little bit in it. But you don't really ever stop watching it. It's always on repeat for me. And so The Office has just been a big part of my adult life, just humor and jokes and just having fun. Well, while I was going through the whole recovery process and as I came out kind of on the other side of it, I found that because I continually watched The Office, I found that I just would feel lighter, would feel just these glimpses of like, laughing and smiling in the midst of what's like often very difficult and very hard times. And I was like, those little moments of like light are absolutely invaluable. And I was like, if I could bottle that, if I could encapsulate that somehow and be able to share that with other people going through on a similar journey to what I'm going through, man, that would be worth it. And so that's kind of where the inspiration came from. I know the Office material pretty well, and I know recovery. I'm still learning a ton about recovery and sobriety and everything that all involves. But yeah, so that's how it came about, man. Just joining kind of the two big passions of my life right now, and then just getting that out there for other people to hopefully enjoy.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I remember back when I was in like high school, like senior in high school, I would go over to my friend's house and we would like have office parties and we would like watch The Office and just like have a bunch of people get together, and like every week that a new episode would come out, we would like watch it. And I just remember it was just so funny, and it was such a good way to build community because it was just so relatable, and it was just it's so funny. And it's good that you're like an Office connoisseur, because it's like a lot of the memes that you've posted are like so spot on with what is happening in the scene and like how you tie it into recovery. And it's like, it takes someone who knows The Office like inside and out in order to do that. So like, I commend you for doing what you're doing with your page, because it's like, it takes a lot of detail. You got to like be able to really know and understand what's happening. And I just think that's awesome, man. That's super cool that you've started this and can bring this to people who need it, and who need some humility, some humor in their life today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, there's so many times, I'll initially I'll think of a topic within recovery or sobriety, and that's usually where it starts. And then I'm able to kind of filter through, in my memory bank and be like, oh yeah, there's this scene,
Yes.
in this episode, and even given like the context of the episode, I'll be like, it kind of flows in that, with that vibe there. So I'll pull that, clip out and roll with it. So yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's a lot
That's
of fun.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, yeah, that's great. So our topic today is the three H's, and so the office recovery actually hit me up when I was bringing a topic to him earlier in the day, and he was like, "Yeah, I do the three H's, and it's humility, happiness, and hope." And so with that, how do you bring happiness into your life today? Like either through this page or like other ways that you bring happiness into your life as a person of sobriety or someone in recovery. Like what do you do
Mhm.
to keep happiness kind of flowing into your life today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I mean, there's a handful of things that I do, on a daily basis that try to encourage that happiness. And a lot of times I look at it as joy too, right? Because happiness is wonderful. Happiness can be fleeting, but it's a nice alliteration with the H's. So we
Yeah.
stay with happiness. But yeah, creating happiness and joy, man. One of the biggest things I've learned is that you're an initiator in your own happiness. Like you
Yes.
are the one that gets to make the choice day in and day out of not only like your perspective, your mindset, what you put yourself around, the environment that you're in. Like those are up to you, right? To a certain degree. Obviously there's some things that are out of our control. But
Yes.
that's incredibly empowering because you can look at that and say, okay, today I've got an option to pursue happiness, to pursue joy. Um, and for me, what that looks like is obviously The Office, right? I got to say that.
Yeah.
Having that on in the background while I'm folding laundry or something.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, man, sunlight,
Yeah.
sunlight is a big one. I get out in the sun as much as I can. Just getting fresh air, being out in nature,
Hmm.
exercising, working out, getting those endorphins running, getting that dopamine up there with the exercise, like those kinds of things bring me happiness. And one of the most beautiful things that I found in sobriety and in recovery, right? Because in my past was always, I mean, we all know, like I'm just jonesing for my next drink. That's all I'm thinking about. That's
Yeah.
all that's consuming my mind. And now I get the opportunity to take all these little things like a workout, going out in the sunlight just even for a minute, um, you know, watching The Office, and probably most importantly, hanging with my family, like my wife and my kids.
Hmm.
And there
Yeah.
is such a surreal amount of happiness that I'm finding in every single moment, like bringing my kid to bed at night, and him whispering, I love you when you walk out the door. Like that puts a smile on my face now. Like,
Totally.
and to pursue happiness is to recognize those moments for what they are. Like it's easy to just
Mm.
blow past those. But
Yeah.
if you really want to find happiness in your life, you pay attention to those little moments, right? Those little like glimmer moments. And
That's
that's
good.
that's kind of how I do it. I try to keep my eyes open, my ears open, my heart open for those moments of joy, and that's how I feed the happiness and keeps me rolling.
That's awesome. Yeah, and like that's what I heard from that last part was being able to stay in the moment and stay present. And whenever you mention like
Hmm.
the pursuit of happiness, I always think of like Kid Cudi's song, The Pursuit of Happiness, and it's just
Yeah.
like it's so important to pursue happiness because emotions, which I've been coming to learn, are like neither good nor bad, which means they're neither
Hmm.
happy nor sad depending on what's going on. And it's like crazy enough, today I was talking to like my chiropractor about this, about how you have to go and be present for those moments that you find as happy, because if you're like hungover or you're stuck on
Hmm.
something that's like a thought, or you're just in a bad spot with life, like it's going to be so hard to be present for those moments of happiness, and it's going to be hard to like find true happiness in like what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's great that you find happiness in your family too. It's today it's so easy just to be like, yeah, go outside, play with the dogs and get a little smile, and like spend time with my wife. And today it's like I really find a lot of things that bring me so much joy, to where back when like I was using, it was like so hard to be present
Hmm.
for those things and like find true happiness in those things, you know? And so that kind of
Yeah.
leads me into my next question. So like when you were out using and partying, were you also trying to like find happiness in, you know, the idea of like drinking and partying and being around people? Like how did you try to find or seek happiness when you were out using? And like do you think it was real happiness, or like, you know, where was
Mm.
that like an illusion of happiness?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when I was out there drinking, there absolutely was a pursuit of happiness because there's so much going on internally, with what I had experienced and been through, that um, I felt like that was the only way to find happiness. And I think the problem with that was I was often mislabeling, um, you know, I was mislabeling like the calmness that comes with that first sip, right,
Mm,
as happiness. And so so I'm chasing that. I'm chasing, like, all of a sudden I don't have to think about what's happened in my past. All of a sudden I don't have to think about my identity, like who I am. Like I can just kind of just be, like,
mhm.
exist. And that was mislabeled as happiness. Well, the problem with that is,
Yeah.
that fades really, really fast. And then
Mhm.
you're just down even further. And so you're trying to kick it up and get that next, like, level of happiness. So yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. It was like this morphed pursuit of happiness, that you're trying to pursue. And I think ultimately, for me at least, it comes down to so much to this identity, of who I am and what's important to me, and what my core beliefs are about myself. Um, and when those were broken, the happiness factor was broken. And I thought that it was found in drinking. And it's night and day difference now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like did you feel like drinking and partying, did those kind of like chip away at your core beliefs, and did those like make you obviously from what you were just saying, you know, it made you kind of chase the idea of happiness and finding that happiness, but do you feel like the more that you drank, the more you tried to like chase that, and like how was that for you? What was that like?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, in in this whole recovery process, I've been blessed enough to be able to go and see a therapist now for a year and a half straight, and it's been massively helpful for me, working on, core beliefs and things like that. And when I was drinking, I had this negative core belief about myself, that I was a failure, that
Mm,
everything
yeah.
I did failed. No matter how hard I tried, no matter what dream I had, it wouldn't work. It would just fail, and I would be the one that would ruin it. And so, when I would drink, I got the briefest moment of escape from
Mhm.
that seeming reality for me. And so the downside is you come down off of that drinking and, partying and whatever, and more often than not, you're like, what'd I do? What'd I text? Where'd I go? You know,
Yeah.
and that just piles on to that core belief of failure. I come back to my family. I'm like, oh, like, what I just do,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, it just compounds on that negative core belief. And so there's absolutely no way you're, escaping that vicious cycle without something pretty radical happening. And,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, and that was my world for a long time, was just kind of running that track of, trying to escape who I was, or what I thought I
Mhm.
was, and then just digging myself into a deeper hole, that just
Yeah.
kept filling up with that shame and guilt.
Yeah. I can totally relate. Like the vicious cycle, and I can 100% relate to the idea of like once I started like yeah, drinking or using or doing whatever I was doing, it was yeah, like that couple minutes or hours of just like this feeling of intense joy or intense security because of what I was consuming. And then it was just like, you know, kind of everything got put into a spin cycle after that. And then it was like,
Mm,
after that, when you're coming down or you're hungover or whatever, it's just like, yeah, you start to think like, I am worthless. I'm not a good person. Like, what did I do
right.
last night? And like, it's almost like for me, and yeah, it sounds like for you too, like partying and drinking, like robbed happiness, you know? Like for me,
Yeah.
it was like the false sense of like, oh, I'm having a good time. I'm being so friendly. I might hook up with this chick and I'm like doing this and doing that. But really, it was just like the false belief of like, oh, this is bringing me internal joy when it was just all fake, you know? And
Yeah.
it's just crazy that, you know, partying can just like attack those emotions so much and just kind of puts like a smoke screen up of like, yeah, this is what you think is happening, but really the next like in the next 24 hours you're going to go through this huge state of emotions that's just going to like turn you on your head, and then it's just like all of a sudden it's the next morning and I'm hungover and I like don't want to be on this earth anymore, and I'm like, dude, how do I fix this? Like I got to get back to that sense of happiness that I had. And like even during college, like I remember so many times of just trying to like get that feeling over and over and over again, because yeah, I was so insecure with like just how who I was and what I was doing, and like the emotions that came with all of like the ups and downs of partying really just like took me for a ride. And it's just it's hard to break that cycle, you know, and it's hard to get out of
Hmm.
that. And so like
Yeah.
how did partying affect your three H's? Like would you say that, like, you know, yeah, how did partying kind of take away from your happiness, your humility, and your hope?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, they're definitely interconnected. You know, the happiness, right? We've talked about a little bit. You feel like you are happy for a second, but it's not real. It's like you said, a smoke screen, and it's not the real deal. And when it comes to the humility side of things, you know, there's for me anyway, there was almost no even contemplation of what humility was or what it would look like, because I was so self-consumed and so inward turned on
Mm,
myself and
yeah.
you know, when I'm going to get my next drink, when I'm going to, you know, get out there again. Like there was such a you know, really a self-conceit, this kind of inward focus, that the idea of humility wouldn't have even crossed my mind, you know. And what's fascinating is I think that like even with the office recovery account, like yes, my goal is to help folks walking through the sober journey be able to laugh a little bit, be able to smile maybe on a hard day.
Mm,
But it's really in those moments, I think, where you then are outside of yourself a little bit.
yeah.
And right, there's the famous saying about humility, that it's not thinking of yourself less, but it's thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. Right, that's
Mm,
humility.
yeah.
And as cliche as that sounds, it's cliche for a reason, because I think humility comes in when you least expect it, and you're not even going to be thinking about it. And it's going to be something in retrospect where you look back and you think, wow, I just responded differently to that situation than I would have in the past.
Yeah.
It's almost always 2020 hindsight, where you look back and you're like, oh, I guess that was I guess that was humble. Um, but
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
that humility where all of a sudden you recognize that you're stepping into spaces that were at in the past, you would have stepped into those spaces and you would have just blown them up, right? And now
Mhm.
you're stepping into those spaces. You're able to be present. You're able to be kind. You're able to be generous and loving, compassionate. Like all of these great virtues and qualities
Mm,
you can be in, because of the humility of understanding, like, you know, whether it's our powerlessness over our alcohol and drugs or
yeah.
whatever the case is, you step into that and you're responding differently, and you look back and you think there's that humility. And I think that slowly, sometimes very slowly, integrates into our being and our soul, such that then it starts to develop and lead into hope. And
Mm,
that's
that's
where
good.
you start recognizing, like, you know what? Um, I'm outside of myself to a certain degree. I'm no longer self-consumed and self-absorbed enough with, with my using. I'm able to
Yeah,
start serving and loving and caring for other people. So that humility plays in, and you start to see the way that your life begins to unfold just day by day. And you can start to see that, back to what we were saying before, like taking advantage of those moments, you start to see these good moments start to pile on top of each other. That gives you hope. Because then
mm,
you start thinking, man, what if, I mean, I'm on a little bit of a run here. What if this thing lasted like a week?
yeah,
What if this thing lasted a month, a year, and you just extrapolate that, and there's your hope. Like now all of a sudden you're like, man, this life could actually be beautiful. Like this life could be incredible. It
totally.
could be the simplest life ever, but man, it could be awesome. And so I think that's
Yeah.
how it all plays together, and that's why the office recovery exists. Is just get you smiling, get you out of yourself a little bit,
Mm,
and just carry you through. Really, right? Carry you through that moment, through that day.
mm,
If it can play a little part of that, get you through that day, so that that humility builds, and ultimately that you find that hope to keep going.
yeah, dude, that's awesome. That's great. Like, and that made me think of like when I was first trying to get sober, like, and this was back in 2020, so this was like 4 years ago, almost, almost 4 years ago, and
Mm,
I would have never thought to go to social media or to go to YouTube or to go to like Spotify and look up certain things about sobriety and recovery. And I feel like today the idea of sobriety is becoming so much more mainstream. And, I've talked to some other guests on the podcast about this before of like, it's almost like it's a movement. Like, it's
hmm
like people want to get sober. People like want to stop drinking. Alcohol is starting to almost get looked at like cigarettes. And it's just,
right.
I've heard of a lot of younger kids, even in high school, who just like choose not to drink because it's just like, that's just how things are going, which I think is really cool. And I think
Yeah.
something like the office recovery or any other sort of sobriety inspiration or any sort of page or podcast that brings a little bit of like, hey, here's a little bit of hope and here's a little happiness and here's something to put a smile on your face today. That would have helped me so much back in the day just to like get a little laugh and maybe give me a little
hmm
like, all right, look at all these people who are doing this, all these people that are commenting and like liking this. And like, it's just cool that there's so many creative, like sober things that are coming out to like help others and kind of play a part in some humility of helping others realize that like sobriety is an achievable thing and it's like we can have some humor with this. Like sobriety isn't just serious and being like, oh, life sucks now that we're sober. It's like
Right. Yeah.
life is decent, and it's like I actually have so much of these other qualities that we're talking about now today that I'm sober. And I always thought that I
Mm,
had them when I was using and I wasn't. But so yeah, for the people listening, humility, if you did not know, and this is the a definition, humility is defined as a modest or low view of one importance or humbleness. And I always thought that like, back when I was using that, oh yeah, I'm gonna be humble, I'm gonna be cool and like quiet and low key, and really I was like the exact opposite, and I was just like
hmm Yeah.
trash person, and so how do you
Yeah.
practice humility today? Like I can see it coming out through the office recovery page, but how do you practice it like in your day-to-day life?
Yeah. Sorry, I think you might have cut out on that last part there. What was that?
Oh, it's all good. So how do you practice humility in your day-to-day life today?
Mm. Yeah. For me, I definitely have a pretty heavy spiritual side to all of this recovery thing.
Yeah,
So for me,
cool.
a lot of it has to do, as far as the pursuit of humility is, asking God to continue to instill that in my life, to continue to
Mm,
build that in my life, put me in circumstances that will force me to
yeah.
use humility. Not, of course, none of us desire to be put in situations where we're humbled, right? I've had plenty of those. I've had enough of those.
Yeah.
Um, but just like, where's an opportunity for me to practice humility? And for me, again, that looks so much like this outward loving and caring for other people, whether it's, the people I'm supposed to love, like my family, or
Hmm.
it's, people that strangers I meet, or anybody. Like, give me a chance to love. Okay, let me re-say that. Give me a chance to love somebody today, and that will spur on the humility in my life, because it's going to be getting me outside of myself, outside of
Hmm.
me thinking about myself. So
Yes.
I don't think of myself, as unimportant or as not valuable or not worthy. Like, that's not humility. But
Yeah.
humility is taking these confident steps of knowing who you are into the position of being able to help and love and care and serve other people. Again, whether that's family or strangers. So that's how I pursue humility. It's like, God, give me those opportunities any way I can. Um,
Mm. Yeah, that's
and
good.
yeah.
Yeah, dude. No, that's great. And it seems like humility and empathy run really close, and
Mm,
it took me getting sober and getting some therapy and finding some recovery to like understand the true meaning of empathy. And it's like
yeah.
it's and I always thought when I was using and when I was out, like, oh yeah, I care about other people and I can understand other people's situations. And it's like I could barely understand my own situation, and like how was I gonna understand other people if I couldn't even like understand myself? And so for me it
Hmm.
really took like getting sober and doing the work and getting humbled and like putting myself in those situations to where I could learn about these things so I can like begin to practice them on a daily basis, and it's still like, even today being clean and being sober, like it's still hard sometimes to like try to be humble and to try to have empathy, and it's like always just a good practice of like how can I get out of myself right now, because like I'm not the main character, I'm
Yeah.
not the main
Yeah.
character in this situation. Like this person is, whatever, with whatever they're going through and however they're going through. And I really like how you said like it's not about not having value for yourself or like not understanding the value for yourself, but like understanding that like you have to take a back seat sometimes, and that like there are other people way more important than you in this moment.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, um, it's humility is one of those things, right? If you continue to chase it, you'll probably never actually get your hands on it.
Mm,
If you sit in the idea or the space of wanting to love others well,
mm,
um, it's going to be a byproduct of that,
yeah,
because I think it's you chase humility and you're like, I'm going to be the most humble person in the world, and that's not going to happen. Like,
no,
let's be real. But if you just day in and day out, just look around and say, how can I love people well? Like, what does that look like for me today? Um, it's just naturally going to put you outside of yourself, and that humility is going to become a byproduct of your life.
hmm,
And you probably won't even know it. You won't even know it till somebody says, hey, man, that guy's humble. That guy is
yes,
so humble. And then you'll be
totally.
shocked. You'll be like, I am. Like,
Yeah,
you
right.
know,
Yeah, it's
like,
like then you don't even take credit for it too, because it's like, and that's how
right.
it's supposed to be, and it's
Yep.
nice being able to do that too. And it's just, yeah, that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
the next thing is hope. So hope is defined
Mm,
as the force that motivates people enough to start making concrete changes. So
mm.
how did you find hope when you were trying to get sober?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So hope is absolutely one of my favorite words in the recovery space, because I think most people would admit, especially those in recovery, that they were absolutely hopeless while they were in active addiction or they're using. Um, that there's just a complete lack of hope. For me, hope started to shine in really when I started to have those identity shifts of who I am, and believing that I'm no longer a failure, that I'm not really a failure, that my circumstances might might explain me, but they don't define me, and that I can choose moving forward, how I'm going to live my life and what I'm going to put myself around and the kind of person that I want to be. And when I start having these identity shifts of like, I am loved, like I am actually valuable. I am smart. I like all these things that I
Yeah.
deep down just did not believe. Um,
Mm.
there
Mhm.
was this shift where all of a sudden, like I started, like I said before, I started seeing like, okay, I think I could have a good next hour. I think I could have a good next day. Like, and as those started to stack, and I started to see, like they talk about it all the time about doors opening, right? In recovery, like all of a sudden all these doors start opening for you. And I'm not saying that like all these crazy things have just happened since I've, been in recovery,
Mhm.
but these doors of being able to find beauty in the simple things in life, that was shut for me, and now that's open. Um, the door of being able to actually empathize, like we were talking about with people, and actually kind of have real empathy,
Yeah.
that door is now open. So, like every time I get to see those doors and I get to see and experience these new things,
Mhm.
that continues to just pile on the hope, that continues to make change. And once you get a taste of it, once you get a taste of the hope, you're like, there's
Yeah.
no going back. There's no going back. Like you will do, like that definition says, like make concrete changes in your life. Like you get a glimpse of a hopeful future, like what your future could actually look like.
Mhm.
And you'll make those changes as necessary, like to do those things, and I've made some pretty crazy changes to like get to where I am now. Um,
Yes.
and but without those, I mean, I don't think I would be here. And now every day, like there is so much hope that I've got in my life. Like no joke, the second I wake up to like the time I go to bed, there's just this hope of like not this necessarily this grandiose like massive life like where I've just got all this wealth and fame and all this
Yeah.
stuff, like all this stuff I kind of used to think I wanted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now it's like, you know what, even if it's a nice quiet simple life, like there's a hope that I'll actually enjoy it and that I'll
Dude.
actually be able to leave a legacy that matters, and that
Mm.
hope continues to make me move forward.
Dude, that is so powerful, dude. That's so true, It's like and it's like staying in the moment, right? And it's just so important, and there's so much to
Mm,
find. There's so much hope to find nowadays, like, and I mean, you hit
yeah,
on a lot of really good things with that too. Is I really enjoy how you said, like, when you were using, you thought you wanted all of these things, and it's like so true, like the things that I have in my life today are the things that I could have only imagined of having when I was out using and out partying. And like, I always tried to like work so hard on specific things when I was using, and I was always like, why can't I go anywhere with this? Like, why can't I get anything done? And it was like
hmm,
based in such a bad place to begin with, but also at the same time, it's like I had no hope to like carry that out. I had no hope of where, like, this project would go, and or this relationship would go. And it was like using always brought me to a place where I had no hope at the end of the day. I had no hope
yeah,
no matter what. And like today it's crazy because like you said, like if I wake up and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna just stay right where I'm at today and just kind of see how the day goes, like a lot of times with whatever comes up, like my first instinct that I go to now is hope. Like, oh yeah,
yeah,
like I know that X, Y, and Z is gonna work out and it's gonna be okay. And it's like, and it's not like toxic positivity or being overly positive or rose colored glasses. It's just like
right,
I have an internal feeling that like it'll be okay, because I know, just like what you were saying, is once you start seeing these changes in early sobriety, that like, oh, there is something there that's going to help us like get to the next piece and like go along with what's happening. And it's just, I'm grateful today that I have so much hope and recognition in that hope, and know that like there's something there that's going to like continue helping us out. It's not just going to leave us stranded and like good luck.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, like what you said about the um kind of like overly cheery rainbows and unicorn
Yeah,
farts, kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
rose colored glasses stuff, like it's not that at all, because like life still can very much suck and like can be
Yes.
very hard and very difficult, and like
Hmm.
things will happen, like that's just the nature of existing on this planet. And so that's going to happen. But I think for so many of us, and for myself especially, walking through the recovery process and getting sober for me felt like such a mountain to overcome, that
Yes.
now I do look at it and I'm like, I'm still standing. Like, I'm
Mhm.
still here. Like, and there begins to be this sense of like, no matter what comes my way, no matter what gets thrown at me, like even if it hurts like hell,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be standing on the other side of it. And like we'll figure it out, you know? And
Mhm.
there's this really beautiful, like rhythmic flowing that comes to your life in sobriety or in recovery, where you're able to just kind of mold and be flexible with what happens in life, um,
Yes.
and just go. You kind of go with the flow. Not that you're just being swept up in all these kinds of things, but you're able to
Mhm.
embrace life circumstances, and you enter into like you're able to enter into all these different narratives of life, knowing, like there's this deep knowing that on the other side of it you're still standing and you're good.
Yes.
So
Dude,
yeah.
100%. I can agree with that 100%. So, where do you find hope today, or how do you find hope today? Do you work like do you have like a spiritual side of your sobriety that you go to? Are you in
Mm.
some sort of recovery that helps you with finding hope, or like where do you find your main inspirations for, or like, where do you find hope today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, when when I first got in recovery, man, I was bad enough that I was like, I will do anything and everything I possibly can to never go back. Right.
Yes.
And so I
Me too.
stepped in, I like both feet jumped into this thing. And I do have definitely a spiritual side to it. I have actually have a background as a pastor of a church.
Cool.
And so
Okay.
I've led churches before as pastors, and that's a whole nother side of my story.
Wow.
That definitely plays into it all. Um, but that spirituality has stayed there, and that relationship and connection has stayed there. So that's definitely the primary source for me. And the primary source of my identity has flown from that. And so that's really the bedrock that gives me the hope, is like looking at, for me, looking at the way that God views me, in spite of, and even in the midst of my using as beloved and as treasured, and
Mhm.
as cherished. That shifted my identity. Before I had these different conceptions of God, even as a pastor, like we we're still human. We make
Mhm.
mistakes, we get it wrong. And so there was that shift there. That was the bedrock that started it. Now, like that continues forward in me finding hope every day, is just resting in that. Like in my home office, I literally have on my wall just framed, I am beloved. Like just this daily
Mhm.
reminder of like who I am, my identity, and that spurs on hope. And then the other thing for me, the other big piece of it, I think, is the community aspect. When I was in the recovery
Yes.
program and doing all this, I did, inpatient stuff, and I did
Mm.
intensive outpatient for almost a year.
Wow.
This
Okay.
community that I built, or that was really built around me, um,
Yeah.
left such a lasting impact that I was like, there is no way I will go a day without connecting in some way, shape, or form with somebody else that's on the same journey as I'm on. Um, and whether it's like, obviously people in real life, great. If it's the Instagram sober community,
Yeah.
like, dude, there's been a shocking amount of just hope that I have experienced and felt
Yeah.
from the Instagram community. And it's one of those things where I never thought that would really happen. And stepping into that space, I've actually found it to be the opposite. Like there's been this incredible like receiving of me and of the content that I put out,
Yeah.
but then also just talking back and forth with people like you and like other people that we get to share our stories a little bit. We get to encourage each other. We get to be real with one another.
Mm.
Um, that's the other biggest thing with, I think with hope for me is like, I pursue my God and I pursue people.
Mm.
And that's what brings me hope. Yeah, because again, I'm outside of myself, right? And I
Yeah.
can actually enjoy those moments.
Dude, yeah, that's great, man. That's great. And you touched on a lot of stuff there too, like community for me is so important. And like when I was back out doing my thing, I always hung around the people that I knew I would be able to like get something from, whether that was like
Hmm.
drugs or alcohol or you know, with women, like anything. And then it
Yeah.
would be like, I was hanging around people for the wrong reasons, and I was hanging around people because I was using people. And like today, it's like in recovery, I need people who are in the same mindset as me, because like if I'm gonna be hanging out with people who are gonna be conducive to my recovery, like I need you to be like, dude, I'm not gonna be going back out. Like
Hmm.
if I'm thinking about using, I'm gonna be talking to someone about it. And like it's so
Yeah.
important to have contacts, and it's great that Instagram and TikTok and social media has all of these people that are kind of coming out of the woodworks that are just like recovery coach, sober coach. Like having Fosto the Hope Dealer on here last week was just like, it was so cool to talk to him because, Instagram creates this like facade for people, right? And then
Yeah.
talking to him in real life, I was like, dude, like you're just like me. You are just a person just like me, and
Yeah.
just like you. It's cool because it's like I'm glad we're keeping your anonymity, and I'm glad that we're kind of keeping the screen up for who you are as a person, and it's just like, or your identity. But it's also just like it really helps me when other people talk to me and send me DMs that were like, dude, I was struggling last night and I listened to your podcast and it helped me. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, dude. Like, it brings me so much hope to keep doing what I'm doing, because we're all people and we all
Yep.
struggle. And it's like, no one is better than another person. And,
Hmm.
whether you're struggling with alcohol and drugs right now or you've been sober for 10 years, like, it's all relative. And I'm just
Yeah.
like grateful that Instagram has been a platform to allow so many people to like be open about their sobriety and be open about their recovery. And it's like, even 4 or 5 years ago, it's like I don't think I would have ever like ventured onto a social platform and talked about my recovery. But now it's like today I want to be able to share it with so many people, because I know that like there are more people out there using dope today. There are more people out there drinking today, and they might
Yeah.
not know what it's like. And it's like if we can give them a glimpse into like, hey, here's this little bit of freedom that you got to work for, but when you get here, it's so much better than the other side. Cause like I always thought like, oh, if I'm gonna get sober, life is gonna suck. I'm not gonna party anymore. It's not gonna be fun. And it's like it's the complete opposite. And it's like
Yeah.
even just, yeah, this community on Instagram gives me so much hope, because there's so many people being so like, they have so much humility, and they're being like just a source of hope for so many people who want to find it. Because if I was someone like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to get sober, and I go onto Instagram and like, how do I get sober, sobriety, X, Y, and Z, and I find some of these people that me and you were interacting with today, and it's just like, dude, oh my gosh, like it's a beacon of hope for people who are trying to find it. And it's beautiful that these things are available for people instead of having to do something like, so many people are scared of checking into rehabs or talking to their doctors or talking to their families. And maybe we can be the first stepping stone to help them realize like, yo, this is available, you can do this. Like, you just got to take that first little step to get there, and then you will open the doors for freedom for yourself when you find them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so cool, I mean, at the end of the day, we're as humans built for relationship, we're built for community, we're built for connection. Like nobody is meant to be completely alone all the time. And it's fascinating to me, especially with the social media side of things, right? You've always heard it decried as this very impersonal, like, are those really your friends or are those just your Facebook friends, right?
Yeah.
Like you so like you've heard all that constantly said, but what's really interesting is the paradox of, like, there's a little bit of this freedom, right, that you can hide behind the screen to a certain degree, but that hiding behind the screen also allows you to have this crazy vulnerability with people that
Yes.
don't know you in a way that, like, you probably aren't going to express that to everybody in your actual personal life.
Oh, so true.
And that vulnerability is what's connecting us, right? Like, we're like,
Hmm.
yes, like, I've been there. I know that feeling. And like, if you get that in real time, in real life, that's great. And like, hopefully we all have those relationships too. But even like you said, as a stepping stone, if somebody's just considering it, or if they're struggling, or if they're like, where in the world do I go from here? Like,
Yes.
hopefully they can get on and find some of our content, other people's out there that are just putting out amazing stuff. See the realness of who they were and what they are now, and like where they're headed. And so many of us, at least that I've seen in this social media space, we're just like holding out an open hand and saying, like, just join us, like,
Yeah.
come along for this ride, because I promise you it is well worth it. Like, I promise you, you will
Hmm.
get peace like you've never known, the peace that you've been looking for and searching. Like, you will find that in recovery, and like,
Yeah.
you'll find who you are, you'll find your people, you'll find all those things that you're looking for and searching, humility, happiness, hope. Like, you will ultimately find that.
Mm.
And a huge step into that is sobriety or recovery.
Hmm. Yeah, dude, that's
Like, that
awesome. All right.
opens the door. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, that's great. That is great. All right, so I got one more for you. So if
Mhm.
someone were to come up and ask you today how to get sober, what would you tell them?
First thing that I would say, depending on, obviously, if I have a relationship with them, or if I know who they are or their context. But I think the biggest and most important thing to start out is the aspect of community. Like, if you can find yourself a person or a group of people to be real with, that's going to go a long way in walking you through all the other hard stuff that you're going to have to step through. So if you find a community first and foremost, and then depending on your situation, you're going to have to detox from some stuff, get somewhere that's going to be safe for you to do that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Start looking at ways in which you can deal with all the internal stuff that's driving you to use and to drink.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's therapy, or, there's a whole host of different options. For me, therapy has been massively helpful. Like I
Yeah.
said before. So, like, if somebody's like, how do I get sober? How do I recover? It would be like, find a community. If you're going to be detoxing, detox somewhere safe, somewhere where
Yeah.
people are going to take care of you, and
Hmm.
then um, find a program, find a system, find a community that can help you dig deep into who you are, and figure out why you're doing it, right? Like, Gabor Mate, he's a Canadian guy you're probably familiar with, that is a doctor, and he speaks a lot about addiction, and he talks about, like, don't ask the person in addiction why the addiction, like, ask the person why the pain. And that's always struck
Mm.
me super, super, super close, because
Yeah,
it's
that's
like the
deep.
using and the drinking, right, is a solution for a lot of people, to
Mhm.
cover something, to hide something, to escape something, to numb something. Like, all of
Yes.
those things, aren't, yeah, it's a coping mechanism. And so, you know, why the pain, that third kind of piece of the puzzle, I'd say, figure out what's going on, and do some
Mm.
hard work in there. And that's where really the work of recovery happens. But
Yeah.
as you step through those doors, that's where you find the hope start to shine out.
Mm. Yeah, dude, that's great. That's great. Right on, man. Good stuff. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that is all of the time we have today. Thank you so much, Office Recovery, for being on the Last Drop podcast. Be sure to go check out his page at Office Recovery on Instagram for some super hilarious office related sobriety memes. And yeah, man, thank you so much again for jumping on the podcast with me this afternoon. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Make sure you head over to the lastdropclothingco.com. Check out the new 2024 drop. These items were designed by yours truly, printed at the print shop that I work for, to spread some hope and to help end the stigma of addiction. These garments are high quality. The designs are super, super, super fresh. So yeah, go over and go get a free beanie with every order over $100. Just head to the lastdropclothingco.com, place your order today. And once again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Please share, like, send this to someone who might need to hear it today. Spread a little hope and the other two H's with someone. And thanks again for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And the Office Recovery, thank you so much, man, for being on here. Really, really appreciate it. I can't wait to talk to you again, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it, man. This has been awesome.
Definitely, man. Thank you so, so much again. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you soon.